Greenwood Village is an inviting place for wildlife who don't mind sharing our beautiful environment we have here with people. But sometimes our efforts to live in harmony with each other may bring challenges, frustration, and sometimes conflict. That is why it's important for us to understand about wildlife, how they live, ways we can safely mitigate their impacts, and what we can do legally to protect ourselves and our property. Today, let's talk about Canadian geese and mitigating the negative impacts of their presence in Greenwood Village.
Colorado has several different species of geese. Some examples would be Ross's geese, snow geese, and Canada geese. And Canada geese are the ones that we see most commonly here in the Denver metro area. Specifically talking about Canada geese, everything is going to be pretty similar to them. You know, you pretty much see a pretty standard color as far as their feathers are concerned. They have kind of gray and black and brown all mixed in with the characteristic black and white heads there. They can have anywhere around a 36 to 50 inch wingspan, sometimes a little bit bigger on some animals. They can weigh anywhere from around 10 to 15 pounds, plus or minus 5 pounds. They're a pretty average sized bird. They are very, very adaptable as a species and can live in a lot of different areas. Their habitat is very commonly in a lot of human cultivated areas, a lot of farm and ag land. They tend to be found a lot of times near fresh water because they are needing that water as a component of their habitat. Most of the geese that we have here in Colorado are non-migratory, although a vast majority of geese and the species themselves are designed to migrate. They do it seasonally, so everybody sees the big flying V of birds in the sky, both in the spring and the fall as the temperatures and the seasons shift. The vast majority of the geese that we see here in Colorado are non-migratory because our winters are so mild that they can find plenty of winter food without having to travel. Geese can be aggressive at certain times of the year, absolutely. Sometimes it is seasonal, and other times it is just situations where people are getting too close to them, their food, their babies, that sort of thing. But I would say the vast majority of our conflicts that we see as an agency come during the nesting season, when we have either nests with eggs in them or after the eggs have hatched. And you've got the goslings running around with the parents. Both males and females will protect a nest and will protect their babies if people come too close, because they are a lot of times seen as threats. The nesting period or gestational period for geese, you'll generally see anywhere from 24 to 28 days. So after that period, the eggs will hatch, and as soon as the geese hatch, the babies are able to eat their standard diet, which consists of mostly herbivore type stuff. But as soon as the babies hatch, after that 24 to 28 day period, they are ready to go, and they'll just cruise right along with mom and dad.
You may be familiar with the Canadian geese on the lands in our village. It's not uncommon to see these grazing animals walking in a group in a park, on a trail, or even at times on a busy highway. So what are some of those common geese issues in our community that contributes to these birds of a feather flocking together?
Geese love the village because of our lush bluegrass, our open waters. Our parks are just ideal. They absolutely love the haven of the two combination where they can eat and swim and drink all at one place. The largest nuisance that geese bring, of course, is their droppings. It's largely on the trails and the sod. People have to dodge it as they walk, as well as it washes into our waterways and threatens the quality of our waterways. Geese are really more of a nuisance than a safety concern. However, their droppings do contain nutrients that causes potential algae problems in ponds and lakes. Their feces does potentially contain bacteria such as E. coli. Not necessarily a problem for humans as long as they're not touching it. It's more of a concern for dogs. So we encourage people to keep their dog on a leash and to not allow them to eat it, because that's when they could potentially be sick. I guess another potential hazard is they do cross the road, which can be a hazard for traffic. Primarily, our tactics for goose control is we use coyote decoys. In the past, we've used more 2D images, and just recently we started employing more the 3D kind of moving tail coyote decoys to try to scare them away, as well as we use a repellent that we spray on the grass. It changes kind of the look of the grass just to the geese, and then also it has a bad flavor and it upsets their stomachs, so it kind of deters them from wanting to be in that area. It's made from grape skins, and so it's quite expensive, so we're pretty selective on where we put the repellent. And then lastly, we try to clean up as much as possible. So we sweep our park trails 2 to 3 times a week to try to keep all of the droppings off of the trails, just so it's not quite as much of a nuisance.
Before we look at ways to mitigate the negative impacts of geese, did you know that Canadian geese are a protected species under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and nuisance abatement procedures must be followed when dealing with them?
As far as their protection is concerned, geese are protected by both federal and state laws. Because they are a migratory bird and occur across the nation, they are protected by specifically the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, or MBTA. However, state laws also allow some protection of geese when it comes to their nests and the animals themselves, protecting them from harassment. And because they are also a huntable species, there are a lot of laws that govern the hunting mechanisms with relation to manner of take and how many you can hunt and the seasons when you can hunt them, where you can hunt them at.
So we don't actually employ any lethal efforts with goose control. It is all purely non-lethal. So the Greenwood Village Municipal Code makes it unlawful for a person to willfully shoot, capture, harass, injure, or destroy any wild birds or wild animals. City Council recently amended the municipal code to further specify that that section didn't intend to prohibit the use of lawful, non-lethal goose control that would not come in direct contact with the goose and would not harm either the goose, the goslings, the nest, or the eggs. It also clarified that the city could potentially use off-leash dogs for goose control. However, at this time, they have not given direction to use this as an option.
So as a homeowner, what can and can't you do if you encounter some geese on your property? It's simple. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, if you follow the law.
There are many different things that homeowners, private property owners, and businesses can do to solve geese problems on their properties. The first and foremost thing would probably be just related to feeding the animals. Anytime you feed animals, it's going to congregate them in areas where they're not wanted and potentially cause them to keep coming back because there is a source of food there for them. You can use means to haze them out of areas where they're not wanted, and those can consist of remote control devices such as the Gooseinator or trained dogs, and they basically can use those dogs as long as the geese are not harmed or injured in the element of the hazing. You can also use controlled hunting as a legal means in some areas where it is allowed. Some other things that homeowners can do on their property would be checking for nest building activity frequently during the spring and removing any nesting materials found. This is something that you want to be very persistent with, as the birds will continue to come back and the nest is not afforded any protection while it is in the building process. Erecting fences and barriers is another great way to keep geese off of your property. And then lastly, from a population control standpoint, you can also treat the eggs with an oil to prohibit them from hatching, and that is governed by the federal side of things, and there is a permit process that goes in place for that. As far as things that you are not able to do, you don't want to injure, capture, or kill any geese unless you are using applicable hunting regulations and where that is a legal activity. You do not want to disturb any geese on established nests or collect or destroy eggs. Colorado Parks and Wildlife encourages our residents to live responsibly with wildlife in their communities.
Every day in Greenwood Village, citizens have the opportunity to observe and enjoy an abundance of wildlife. Although conflicts do arise, it's important for us to understand how these animals habituate in our environment so that we can all live in harmony together. reporting from Carson Park for GV Kids Inc. News. I am Coco Katsky.